Hello there, my darlings. How are you all? Kenny and I are here. We've both been napping today. We both still look a little sleepy. That's okay. I hope you're reading a lot, maybe doing an art project today, and enjoying our Spirit Week. Okay, so let's get started. We are on chapter... What number is this? It's called Diagon Alley. We still don't know what Diagon Alley is. It is chapter 5. Harry is with the giant Hagrid, and he has his list of all the books and things that he needs. And Harry just asked Hagrid if they will be able to buy it all in London, because that's where they are. And Hagrid said, if you know where to go. So let's see where they're going to go to buy things like a magic wand. Okay. Harry had never been to London before. Although Hagrid seemed to know where he was going, he was obviously not used to getting there in an ordinary way. He got stuck in the ticket barrier on the underground, complained loudly that the seats were too small and the trains were too slow. I don't know how the Muggles manage without magic, he said as they climbed a broken-down escalator which led up to a bustling road lined with shops. Hagrid was so huge that he parted the crowd easily. All Harry had to do was keep close behind him. They passed bookshops and music stores, hamburger bars and cinemas, but nowhere that looked as if it could sell you a magic wand. This was really just an ordinary street full of ordinary people. Could there really be piles of wizard gold buried miles beneath them? Were there really shops that sold spell books and broomsticks? Might this not all be some huge joke that the Dursleys had cooked up? If Harry hadn't known that the Dursleys had no sense of humor, he might have thought so. Yet somehow, even though everything Hagrid had told him so far was unbelievable, Harry couldn't help trusting him. This is it, said Hagrid, coming to a halt. The Leaky Cauldron. It's a famous place. It was a tiny, grubby-looking pub. Look at the sign. Do you see the cauldron with the leak coming out of it? Doesn't look anything that special. Let's see what happens next. It was a tiny, grubby-looking pub. If Hagrid hadn't pointed it out, Harry wouldn't have noticed it was there. The people hurrying by didn't glance at it. Their eyes slid from the big bookshop on one side to the record shop on the other, as if they couldn't see the Leaky Cauldron at all. In fact, Harry had the most peculiar feeling that only he and Hagrid could see it. Before he could mention this, Hagrid had steered him inside. For a famous place, it was very dark and shabby. A few old women were sitting in the corner drinking tiny glasses of sherry. One of them was smoking a long pipe. A little man in a top hat was talking to the old barman, who was quite bald and looked like a gummy walnut. The low buzz of chatter stopped when they walked in. Everyone seemed to know Hagrid. They waved and smiled at him, and the barman reached for a glass, saying, "The usual, Hagrid?" "Can't, Tom. I'm on Hogwarts business," said Hagrid, clapping his great hand on Harry's shoulder and making Harry's knees buckle. "Good Lord," said the barman, peering at Harry. Can this be?" The Leaky Cauldron had suddenly gone completely still and silent. "Bless my soul," whispered the old barman. "Harry Potter, what an honor." He reached out from behind the bar, rushed toward Harry and seized his hand, tears in his eyes. "Welcome back, Mr. Potter, welcome back." Harry didn't know what to say. Everyone was looking at him. The old woman with the pipe was puffing on it without realizing it had gone out. Hagrid was beaming. And then there was a great scraping of chairs, and the next moment, Harry found himself shaking hands with everyone in the Leaky Cauldron. "Doris Crockford, Mr. Potter, can't believe I'm meeting you at last. So proud, Mr. Potter, so proud. Always wanted to shake your hand. I'm all of a flutter. Delighted, Mr. Potter, just can't tell you. Diggle's the name, Daedalus Diggle. I've seen you before, said Harry, as Daedalus Diggle's top hat fell off in his excitement. You bowed to me once in a shop. He remembers, cried Daedalus Diggle, looking around at everyone. Did you hear that? He remembers me. Harry shook hands again and again. Doris Crockford kept coming back for more. A pale young man made his way forward very nervously. One of his eyes was twitching. Professor Quirrell, said Hagrid. Harry, Professor Quirrell will be one of your teachers at Hogwarts. Potter, stammered Professor Quirrell, grasping Harry's hands. Can't tell you how pleased I am to meet you. What sort of magic do you teach, Professor Quirrell? Defense against the dark arts, muttered Professor Quirrell, as though he'd rather not think about it. Not that you need it, eh, Potter? He laughed nervously. You'll be getting all your equipment, I suppose. I've got to go pick up a new book on vampires myself. He looked terrified at the very thought. But the others wouldn't let Professor Quirrell keep Harry to himself. It took almost 10 minutes to get away from them all. At last, Harry managed to make himself heard over the babble. Sorry, Hagrid. My brain is tired. At last, Hagrid managed to make himself heard over the babble. Must get on, lots to buy. Come on, Harry. Doris Crockford shook Harry's hands one last time, and Hagrid led them through the bar and out into a small walled courtyard, where there was nothing but a dustbin and a few weeds. Hagrid grinned at Harry. Told you, didn't I? Told you was famous. Even Professor Quirrell was trembling to meet you. Mind you, he's usually trembling. Is he always that nervous? Oh, yes, poor bloke. Brilliant mind. He was fine while he was out studying out of books, but then he took a year off to get some first-hand experience. They say he met vampires in the Black Forest, and there was a bit of nasty trouble with the hag. Never been the same since. Scared of the students, scared of his own subject. Now, where's me umbrella? Vampires? Hags? Harry's head was swimming. Hagrid, meanwhile, was counting bricks in the wall above the dustbin. 3 up, 2 across, he muttered. Right, stand back, Harry. He tapped the wall 3 times with the point of his umbrella. The brick he had touched quivered. It wriggled in the middle. A small hole appeared. It grew wider and wider. And a second later, they were facing an archway onto a cobbled street which twisted and turned out of sight. Welcome, said Hagrid, to Diagon Alley. He grinned at Harry's amazement. They stepped through the archway. Harry looked quickly over his shoulder. Oh, I'll show you. The illustrations are so cool. So this is Diagon Alley. The archway shrank instantly back into solid wall. The sun shone brightly on a stack of cauldrons outside the nearest shop. Yes. Oh, sorry. Cauldrons, all sizes, copper, brass, pewter, silver, self-stirring, collapsible, said a sign hanging over them. You'll be needing one, said Hagrid, but we gotta get your money first. Harry wished he had about 8 more eyes. He turned his head in every direction as they walked up the street, trying to look at everything at once. The shops, the things outside them, the people doing their shopping. A plump woman outside an apothecary's was shaking her head as they passed, saying, Dragon liver, 16 sickles an ounce? They're mad. A low soft hooting came from a dark shop with a sign saying, Ilops Owl Emporium, tawny, screech, barn, brown, and snowy. Several boys of about Harry's age had their noses pressed against a window with broomsticks in it. "Look," Harry heard one of them say, "the new Nimbus 2000, fastest ever." There were shops selling robes, shops selling telescopes, and strange silver instruments that Harry had never seen before. Windows stacked with barrels of bat spleens and eel's eyes, tottering piles of spell books, quills and rolls of parchment, potion bottles, globes of the moon. "Gringotts," said Hagrid. They had reached a snowy white building which towered over the other little shops. Standing beside its burnished bronze doors, wearing a uniform of scarlet and gold, was "Yep, that's a goblin," said Hagrid quietly as they walked up the white stone steps toward him. Before we continue on, there's another illustration of the other side of the street of Diagon Alley. So cool. I love all the little details. The goblin was about a head shorter than Harry. He had a swarthy, clever face, a pointed beard, and Harry noticed very long fingers and feet. He bowed as they walked inside. Now they were facing a second pair of doors, silver this time, with words engraved upon them. "Enter, stranger, but take heed of what awaits the sin of greed. For those who take but do not earn must pay most dearly in their turn. If you seek beneath our floors a treasure that was never yours, thief, you have been warned. Beware of finding more than treasure there." "Like I said, you'd be mad to try and rob it," said Hagrid. A pair of goblins bowed them through the silver doors, and they were in a vast marble hall. About 100 more goblins were sitting on high stools behind a long counter, scribbling in large ledgers, weighing coins on brass scales, examining precious stones through eyeglasses. There were too many doors to count leading off the hall, and yet more goblins were showing people in and out of these. Hagrid and Harry made for the counter. Here, I'll show you. There's a cool illustration of a goblin checking out a precious stone. "Mornin'," said Hagrid to a free goblin. "We've come to take some money out of Mr. Potter's safe." "You've got his key, sir?" "Got it here somewhere," said Hagrid, and he started emptying his pockets onto the counter, scattering a handful of moldy dog biscuits over the goblin's book of numbers. The goblin wrinkled his nose. Harry watched the goblin on their right, weighing a pile of rubies as big as glowing coals. "Got it," said Hagrid at last, holding up a tiny golden key. The goblin looked at it closely. "That seems to be in order. And I've also got a letter here from Professor Dumbledore," said Hagrid importantly, throwing out his chest. "It's about you-know-what in Vault 713. The goblin read the letter carefully. "Very well," he said, handing it back to Hagrid. "I will have someone take you down to both vaults. Griffook." Griffook was yet another goblin. Once Hagrid had crammed all the dog biscuits back inside his pockets, he and Harry followed Griffook towards one of the doors leading off the hall. "What's the you-know-what in Vault 713? Harry asked. "Can't tell you that," said Hagrid mysteriously. "Very secret. Hogwarts business. Dumbledore's trusted me. More'n my job's worth to tell you that." Griffook held the door open for them. Harry, who had expected more marble, was surprised. They were in a narrow stone passageway lit with flaming torches. It sloped steeply downwards, and there were little railway tracks on the floor. Griffook whistled, and a small cart came hurtling up the tracks toward them. They climbed in, Hagrid with some difficulty, and were off. At first, they just hurtled through a maze of twisting passages. Harry tried to remember left, right, left, middle, fork, right, left, but it was impossible. The rattling cart seemed to know its own way because Griffook wasn't even steering. Harry's eyes stung as the cold air rushed past them, but he kept them wide open. Once he thought he saw a burst of fire at the end of a passage and twisted around to see if it was a dragon. But too late. They plunged even deeper, passing an underground lake where huge stalactites and stalagmites grew from the ceiling and floor. "I never knew," Harry called to Hagrid over the noise of the cart. "What's the difference between a stalagmite and a stalactite?" "Stalagmite's got an M in it," said Hagrid. "And don't ask me questions just now. I think I'm gonna be sick." He did look very green, and when the cart stopped at last beside a small door in the passage wall, Hagrid got out and had to lean against the wall to stop his knees trembling. Griffook unlocked the door. A lot of green smoke came billowing out, and as it cleared, Harry gasped. And we're going to stop there for today. Sorry, Kenny. Just nudged him with the book. We will see what's in Harry's vault tomorrow. All right, so thank you for joining us on our journey with Harry Potter and all the magic, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I love you all. Good night.